Hello South Africa, and welcome back to the 10th edition of Coronacast, your dedicated channel providing you information twice a week on the coronavirus, bringing you some interesting information as well as the views and opinions of some other South Africans who have something to add to the conversation. Obviously, we want to bring you the most up-to-date information, and we look forward to these times twice a week to have a chat with you. Today in the studio with me, I've got Zakhele Mbhele, who is the DA Shadow Minister on Small Business. We're going to be traversing the challenges facing small business arising from the coronavirus, the importance of small business, as well as some of the facilities that have been made available for small business. We'll also be talking to Josie van Aswegen from Fabulous Flowers right here in Cape Town about the impact that the coronavirus has had on her business and some innovative ways that she's looking at getting through this effects on her particular business. Remember as well that if you've got any questions for the show or you've got some information you want to share, please remember you can email us directly at coronavirus, that's one word, coronavirus @da.org.za. Remember too that after the show, we have a dedicated website where we put the most up-to-date information relating to the coronavirus on that website, and that is www.da.org.za/defeating coronavirus. It's one word, defeating coronavirus. Please visit that after the show to have a look if there's any particular information that you may require, any useful numbers that you may have may require to assist you going forward. Remember as well, we've also got a hotline that is looking specifically at abuse of citizens by the security services. In a time of national crisis like this, unfortunately, there are some of the security services. The bulk of them do their job very, very well, and we're very grateful for it. But if you feel that a security personnel has overstepped the mark, please don't hesitate to report that at our dedicated line, which is reportpoliceabuse@da.org.za, as well as our hotline, our WhatsApp hotline, which is 067 977 9324. We currently have over 150 cases that we are assisting citizens who have suffered abuse at the hands of security services to lodge with both the Independent Police Inspectorate as well as the Military Ombudsperson. This is important because in a time like this of national disaster, we need to ensure that civil liberties are respected and defended. And it's important that as citizens we understand that while we have to abide by some of the lockdown regulations, that the Bill of Rights in terms of the Constitution remains in place, applicable, and must be upheld. We're not an authoritarian state, we're a constitutional democracy, and so there are limits on what the state can and cannot do. Over to the statistics this week, and we have now over 3,300 cases of coronavirus in South Africa. That's up significantly from last week, and hopefully it is a result of a rollout of testing. Remember, if we're going to make these 5 weeks of hard lockdown count, we need to be testing between 17,000 and 60,000 citizens every day. That's to build up enough of a data set for us to be able to plan our way forward. As you know, the DA's put on the table a smart lockdown model to the presidency, which will allow us to transition out of the hard lockdown phase and into softer lockdown periods, depending on what the data is telling us. None of this is possible. The decision making is going to be very, very difficult if we don't have these data sets. So the focus for the next few weeks has got to be on testing, and on the tracing and tracking. The more citizens we can test, the better it's going to be for us to be able to decide how we move South Africa forward. Remember, South Africa, the hard lockdown that we're in now is not sustainable for the long term. It's merely used as an opportunity to buy you time to prepare the country's health response for what is coming and to put in place contingency plans to be able to do it. And we're going to hear later just how devastating this hard lockdown is on the economy, and particular on small businesses. And so whilst we must protect lives, we also must protect livelihoods. And I'm sure many of you at home have witnessed the media reports and maybe witnessed firsthand the fact that there are many, many South Africans who are going hungry out there. One of our solutions has been to put 1,000 Rand into each SASSA grant to be able to bring immediate relief to ordinary citizens who are struggling to get by. There are over 17 million grant recipients in South Africa. Let's take it, for instance, that there are at least 2 people, obviously a lot more often in a household where a grant is going in, which means that immediately you could reach around about 30 million citizens at least to bring absolute immediate relief for people to be able to buy food and essentials during this time. That's, of course, over and above the UIF and the TERS and the sectoral funds, which Zach and I are going to be talking about a little bit later. But it certainly beats food parcels, which are very difficult and not sustainable to get out there. It reduces the risk of transmission from having to deliver food, and it also gives people the choice to be able to use that money to buy the food that they want to eat and what is best for their families. We've suggested that is done, certainly for the next 3 months. Remember as well, South Africans, don't panic buy. There's no need to panic buy. The food chains are working. The shops have all got food, and so there's no need to go out and do hoarding. Remember as well, hygiene and sanitization. Use your hand sanitizer when you come and go out of the house, when you go into a shopping center. Make sure you're being very careful not to touch trolleys or other areas where other people could have touched without making sure that your hands are sanitized. Washing your hands for at least 20 seconds works just as well as hand sanitizer. And remember, masks. These are so important. And as I said in last week's show, these are going to become a big part of South Africa's future. No South African should be without some form of cloth mask that they can wear out in public spaces all the time. This will significantly help us, particularly as we move out of a hard lockdown phase and into the rest of our phase on the smart lockdown, will allow us to manage the spread of the virus far easier. So if you don't have one of these cloth masks yet, make sure you get one. You can make one yourself. There are so many great patterns on the internet and so many innovations around there about the patterns and the colors and the various other things that you could use during this time. So don't forget that you can that you must do that. And remember, let's abide by the regulations. We've got about 2 weeks to go. Let's make sure we stick to the regulations. Let's stay home and let's make sure that we are able to flatten the curve so that we can start transitioning our economy out of this hard lockdown phase and into a new lockdown. For those of you who don't know, the President is scheduled to make an announcement this evening on national television. So please keep an eye on the news and on the various bulletins for that address. Obviously, it's very important for us to listen to what the President is going to say. Tonight, he's going to be dealing specifically with what are called the economic and social aspects of the COVID-19 crisis. We're really hoping that he's going to move towards announcing a softening of the lockdown at some stage, that when the hard lockdown is finished, that some of the aspects, certainly of the smart lockdown model that we've put on the table to him will be adopted, so that we can start getting our economy moving and start ensuring that those families where people really live hand to mouth are able to start sustaining themselves and getting back to being able just to survive, certainly over the next little while. Remember, the virus is likely to be with us for 18 to 24 months before a vaccine or some form of treatment is available. And so it's going to come down to managing the virus. Obviously, that we're hoping the President's going to announce a big, bold stimulus package. We hope he's going to take on board the suggestions that we've put onto him about how we can use the social grants to be able to bring immediate assistance to so many families who are struggling out there. We certainly will be watching very carefully for where government's going to get the money from. This is very important. We're certainly not going to allow a raiding of public pension funds or the PRC. What we should be doing is looking, for instance, to the IMF and other places where we can get beneficial loans that have been specifically set up to deal with COVID-19 at very, very good repayment packages without putting our own economy at risk. But obviously, we'll be reporting back on that as it goes. Some good news. You would remember that last week on the show, Jordan Hill-Lewis and I were discussing the DA Shadow Labour Minister, Michael Cardo's suggestion that instead of relying on the UIF to be able to pay out the TERS and the UIF funds, that we make use of the South African Revenue Service. We suggested that because the infrastructure that SARS has is so much better and more reliable than the one UIF has. SARS is also used to dealing with large amounts of people, whereas the UIF is certainly not used to dealing with the millions of claims it's currently sitting at. We're very pleased, therefore, to announce that it looks like government has adopted that idea and that SARS is now going to be able to assist the UIF in getting that money into the hands of our citizens who need it the most. There's no time here for us to waste. The quicker we can inject that money into the hands of those who need it, the more sustainable and survivable this crisis is going to be for people who may have lost their job over this period, or certainly people who are struggling to make sure that they can meet their payroll over this period. So that's really good news, and well done to Michael Cardo and our economics team for the excellent work that they put into driving that particular proposal. You would also know this week that there's been a big brouhaha again around the whole issue of prepared food and cooked chickens. Now, obviously, we believe that any regulation must be adhered to, but those regulations need to be rational and reasonable. Every regulation that's put in place must be measured against one key metric, and that will this help defeat the coronavirus? The assault on everybody's cooked chickens has certainly been in the news, and our Shadow Minister of Trade and Industry, Dean McPherson, has been on the front line of questioning the rationality between cutting down and cutting hot food out of the equation. There wasn't anything in the regulations before about it, but they've since, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has announced now that prepared hot food is not available. Well, of course, we're all very curious about what the definition of hot is, and certainly hope that we're not going to have police personnel running around with thermometers checking the temperature of food. But really, it was one of those regulations, like the cigarettes, that just doesn't seem to make much sense. So many of our frontline personnel don't have time to come home in the evening and prepare a meal. They rely on being able to buy cooked food. Our security personnel on the road who can grab a pie for lunch or grab something to eat in between shifts are so important. It just doesn't make much sense. But on the show, hopefully, in the next on Friday or next Tuesday, we'll have Dean McPherson in to come and give us an update on the legal steps that we're taking to challenge the rationality and reasonableness of this. I'm now going to move to Zakhele Mbhele. Zach is our Shadow Minister of Small Business. Welcome to Coronacast, Zach, and we really look forward to having a chat to you, and then crossing, of course, to Josie in a little while. Do you want to start off by telling us, why are small businesses so important in South Africa, and why are they worth saving?
Good afternoon, John, and good afternoon to all the Coronacast viewers. Thanks for the opportunity. Look, small business is absolutely crucial to the economy, to livelihoods, and that's for 2 or 3 main reasons. The first is that the latest stats or figures tell us that 98.5% of the economy, in terms of the number or the quantum of enterprises, is made up of small, medium enterprises. So that's why they're crucial. They are the backbone and they are the heartbeat of the economy from that perspective. Secondly, small businesses are very often the most conducive spaces to offer job opportunities for young people, for unskilled or semi-skilled job seekers, as well as for inexperienced people in the labor force. So the more we can maximize the job opportunities in the small business space, the better we can address the unemployment problem.
And so, Zach, what are the biggest problems that small business have been approaching you about over the course of the last few weeks and the COVID-19 crisis? Are there some themes that have emerged from that? Are there some common threads?
Well, look, I mean, I think much like my colleagues in the labor portfolio, as well as trade and industry, I have been at the receiving end of an avalanche of queries over the last few weeks from small business owners relating to what are the relief assistance mechanisms or measures that are in place. And I must assure those who are still waiting for my reply, I will get to you as soon as I can. I apologize for any delays. But the queries are largely around what are the relief measures that are out there, what are the eligibility criteria, and how can they be advised or referred in order to find that lifeline, because many of them were already in distress prior to the lockdown, given the declining demand, the declining market demand, and now the lockdown has effectively put many of them to a complete halt.
Now, we would know as well that a small business that closes during this period is very unlikely to be able to reopen again. So there really is a lot of value and interest and impetus for government to inject money to keep small business alive, for precisely the reasons that you've spoken about.
Absolutely. Most small businesses are operating hand to mouth. Their, cash flow is king. Cash flow is their lifeblood. So if they aren't receiving revenue the one month, they're very vulnerable to collapse the following month, because they go into arrears. They can't make payroll and to pay their debts and their standing commitments. And so that's why what we need right now in the short term is that relief package, to give the cash injection to keep them going, so that they have the lifeline and they can be propped up in order to still be on their feet for recovery post the lockdown.
Sure. Zach, now let's just talk about the criteria, because this has been a really controversial issue. We've had some of the sectors, most notably tourism and the small business sector there, saying that they're going to use BBBEE requirements before they pay out aid. Now, I've been on the record on this show saying that I think it's unconscionable at a time of crisis that we look at the color of someone's skin. What we should be looking at is how do we save business. Do you want to take us through your views and opinions on that, and also just want to share with viewers what our plans are around that?
Absolutely. No, I agree entirely. The number one imperative right now is to protect and to preserve small business jobs. I mean, any and all jobs, but especially small business jobs, given the vulnerability of that sector during this current time. The viewers might remember that initially there was a document that was leaked, a draft document from the Small Business Development Department, which indicated that they were going to make eligibility based on majority black ownership. Fortunately, in the final criteria for the department's financing schemes that came out, that had been eliminated. There is a stipulation around the prioritization of women-owned, youth-owned, and disability-owned businesses, and a legal letter has been sent to the minister to request clarity on what that means and how it will operate in the administration of the relief facility. But certainly they seem to have quietly retreated or sort of backpedaled in that regard. The department still asks for the race of the owner on the SME registration websites, and so we've asked for clarity again in that legal letter as to how that aspect will be applied. But as far as the indication is now at surface level, there's not going to be any immediate exclusion on a race basis.
Sure. So South Africa, just to bring you up to speed as well, our parties made a decision that we're going to challenge these regulations in court. We've served a notice on both ministers that we are going to go to the courts now to seek clarity, because we believe that in a time of national crisis like this, it shouldn't matter what the color of the person who is receiving the benefit or the aid. It should be on how do we save the maximum number of jobs in South Africa. Zach, should we bring Josie in now?
Yes.
Josie van Aswegen is a florist originally from Joburg, relocated to Cape Town, and she's just down the road from us in Claremont, but because we are observing social distancing and keeping the regulations on track, she joins us in our Coronacast studio via Skype. Josie owns a business called Fabulous Flowers and focuses on providing floral arrangements and the like for big corporate events and I imagine for small homes. But Josie, do you want to tell us a little bit about Fabulous Flowers and what it does before we get into some of the substance?
Yes, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So Fabulous Flowers delivers beautiful arrangements across the peninsula. We also do gift packs and things like that, but our main focus is fresh flowers. We do a lot of weddings and corporate functions, and yeah, so that is the main thrust of our business. We've obviously had to innovate now and bring on a few other things, but fresh flowers is what we do.
So Josie, you were telling me before we came on air that your business had kind of just started up here in Cape Town before the COVID-19 hit. And what have the main challenges been for you?
Okay, so no, I've been in Cape Town for 20 years. I was in Johannesburg before, but we've been here for 20 years. But we had just, it takes time with a small business. Small business is normally, it starts with a passion and then is turned into a business. And it grows quite slowly. It's not a huge organization. So we had just got into a space where we have got our dream shop. Things were really looking good. We had more weddings, more functions online. We were doing classes and all sorts of things here in our shop, at our beautiful tables. And then, of course, this happened. So we basically weren't allowed to trade at all in the beginning. And then I was at home thinking, well, what on earth could we do now? And I investigated the fruit and vegetable side of it, and we got a license to do that. So we've been doing a few fruit and veggie baskets and sending those out. But all the functions that we had have been sort of cancelled and postponed. People who owed us a lot of money for functions that were done in March have not paid. It's a knock-on effect for everybody. My staff, obviously they can come back and we can do a little bit of work. So a couple of hours a day we can do these fruit and veggies when we've got orders, and my driver does deliver them. I have a permit to do that. But I mean, it's not the thrust of the business. Obviously, I'm competing with the big stores there, and there's not much profit involved in that. But still, it's just to keep the business's name out there and in people's minds. It's really been quite tough. I mean, we are trying to be as positive, as innovative as we can. Somebody said you don't let a good crisis go to waste, and we know that we will emerge from this stronger and greater than we were before. But at this point, that's what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm putting forward. Not too sure how that's actually going to happen. So
Josie, have you applied for any of the UIF or the TERS assistance?
Yes.
And have you had a response?
No, I've applied for TERS, for SAFT, for SMME. I got eventually we reapplied to TERS, and I got we reapplied to SMME and I got a reference number. But that was right in the beginning. I haven't heard anything more at all. That is all for my staff, which obviously they're very important to me. I mean, Tracy's been with me for 19 years, Lillian for 10, and Natasha for 6. That's for their salaries. But there isn't really anywhere, as far as I know, where I can actually get assistance. So I'm a single mom. My husband died a long time ago, so I don't have a man to support me. Where do I actually go to get some assistance?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Zach, do you want to take us through what are the options that are available for small businesses? What are the various funds? How do they work? And what would you advise small business people to be doing at this particular time?
Yes, thanks very much. That is the key and crucial package of information that everyone has been seeking out and that I've been getting queries on. So I'd like to reference a link, and we'll also mention the DA's link along the same lines. There is a link which is called coronavirusmonitor.co.za, which is what I've been sending out. And that is seemingly the most up-to-date from 16 April collation of the various public and private sector funds and initiatives for small business. But I'll just stick to the key ones. So in terms of the Small Business Development Department, they are running the SMME Debt Relief Finance Scheme. That's a pot of money of about 200 million rand, and that is really just to give the lifeline to small business, to cover their overheads, and just keep running. Unfortunately, that has been very slow in processing. There are huge backlogs. I've been receiving complaints about people who haven't received their a registration reference number after 7 to 14 days after the facts. They've submitted their applications but haven't heard back yet, even though we were told there were 81,000 1,000 registrations last week sometime. There've only been about 2,000 applications and no one has heard back yet. So that's really quite slow.
So that's a big theme that's coming through here from some of our viewers on on the line here who are joining us on Facebook and Twitter and the various other platforms, saying that we've made the applications, we filled out the forms, we've heard nothing back. I mean, so what do we do in that case? What is the next move for a business, given the fact that 25th is coming up on Friday? What are we advising small businesses who have not heard back to do?
Unfortunately, the most I can do is, and as I have been doing, is to pass on and apply some pressure to the department about those applications where small businesses have been compliant and have done everything they can. I did see on Twitter the Minister Jabeni said that the department announced on Twitter that they have expanded the operating hours of the call center to 10 p.m. I believe on weekdays. So they are trying to expand capacity in that regard. But we know it's not enough. And this really is the big overhanging point that I can just make quickly, John, is that because we know the parlous states of the public sector, especially after the 10 Zuma years of state capture, looting and corruption, the resources are not there to meet the real-time demand in the economy, and especially in terms of small business for relief and for the lifeline. And without wanting to sound hyperbolic, I really have to say that we are poised to enter or to experience nothing short of an economic massacre in the small business community. We really need to get as many role players and resources on board to mitigate and buffer that.
Josie, so let's just talk about you for a little bit here. I mean, how long could you sustain a lockdown like this for? How much longer? We've been very clear that we don't believe the hard lockdown as it is currently phased is sustainable for very much longer than it's already been announced. How much longer do you think you guys could hang on for, in a hard lockdown phase like this?
I honestly can't tell you. I don't think very much longer because we are not, the money that we're getting in, the little bit that we're getting in is not sustainable for us. My staff are, obviously, I really need them to be paid. The expenses around my business and the vehicles and all those little things have to be paid. I'm not sure where that money is going to come from. I honestly don't know. I'm trying to spend this time to try and reinvent myself a little bit, try and see what other areas I can go into to try and make money that are not maybe retail. I think I'm trying to do that. I think that's the best thing that one can do, but I honestly don't think it will last a lot longer. And the sad part about it is that with small businesses, I have trained in my time, and I've been doing this for a long time, about 8 people who now have their own businesses. All my staff that work for me now didn't know a thing about flowers when they came here, not a thing. Tracy started cleaning buckets when she started with me, and now she's one of the country's best florists. So, that's the thing. We are really, really valuable to the economy in the country. Not only because of that, but this industry uplifts people. It really does. I think flowers are an essential item, quite frankly. But I know that everyone's in the same boat, and one can't. You can't.
But I think that's an important point you make there, Josie, and that is around how small business can transition people from being unskilled, an unskilled school leaver who can't afford to go to university or to go to a tertiary place or doesn't want to, and it gives people options. So I mean, it's really important what you're saying there about the staff that have transitioned through there, because they are that small businesses is the incubator for entrepreneurs of tomorrow.
Exactly. That is so true. You're quite right there.
If I can jump in there, if I can jump in there as well, John, just to reinforce and buttress the point made by Josie, is that a small business is the only space in the economy where somebody can leave school with only matric, can't afford to travel around looking for work necessarily or to get a higher qualification, but they get a small opportunity sweeping the shop floor of a hair salon, move up the ranks, build a career path, and ultimately end up being a self-sustaining and quite prosperous business owner. That's why we need to support small business in every way possible.
Let's
talk about landlords. I mean, Josie, do you own the shop or do you have a landlord?
No, I don't. I have a landlord, and he has given me rent relief for 1 month, and then we're sort of working on a plan.
Well, that's great. I mean, you're very lucky because a lot of the stuff coming through here is from small business saying, our biggest overhead is our rent. We've now been billed 100% for April. You know, what do we do? So, I mean, obviously, was this something you negotiated, or did he come to you?
It was something I negotiated. I sort of have always had always been very open and honest with everybody. So the minute this thing hit, I sent an email and I said, listen, I know that I'm going to be, because you do live from hand to mouth in a small business. You can't write. So there's not huge amounts of reserves that one can just tap into. And I knew this was going to hit us hard. So I sent an email and I said, this is exactly where I'm at. Please, can you help? And they did. And I mean, I had to increase my lease a little bit, but that's fine. I'm just hoping that I can hang in there. So I think it's important just to appeal to them. I think people they've got to help. They really, really please got to help. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've also been calling on the banks as well because, you know, apart from the rent, most small businesses' big overhead is their business loan, their vehicle finance, their credit cards, etc. So what we've been doing is trying to ask the banks to come to the party as well in terms of giving people, you know, just a little bit of relief over the next 3 months, just to help them make it through. Whether it's a overdraft, whether it's an extension of an existing loan, etc. Just to try and help small businesses over this time. And obviously, some of the banks have been a bit more responsive than others. But I think the important point you make there, Josie, and I think maybe it's something which we must share with our viewers, is that it's better to go and be open and upfront with your landlords, your suppliers, etc., so that everybody knows where you are. I wouldn't advise waiting to, you know, get a bill. Rather proactively go out there and speak to your bank, try and speak to your landlord, and just say, look, you know, this is a 3-month thing. You know, I'm happy to extend the lease. I'm happy to extend the term on the vehicle. I'm happy to extend the term on the loan, but I just need immediate relief for the next 3 months to get me through.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think communication is the most important thing. And if people know where they are as well, then they can react and then they can do what they need to do. Yeah. But be upfront and honest and spend this time looking at your business and trying to improve systems, to look at how you can cut down costs, all of those things. So this is a time that kind of thing can happen. Because in the busy life of having your own business, if you, someone like me in this florist industry, it's very hands-on. I find myself working in the business as opposed to working on it more often than not. And it's important for all of us to sort of take a side and look down on it, you know, and try to make some changes. But it's also, you know, we need to do a lot more marketing. We need to do a lot more of all sorts of things, which is always going to cost money. So it would be really awesome if we could get some kind of help there as well. Like, you know, anyway, do you know what I mean? To get some people who can give us some advice on how to go about it. Because as one person running the whole show, it's really difficult to break yourself up into all these little parts to keep things going.
I suppose that's also the pressure that small businesses are under, is that, you know, generally you're like a Josie. You're the CEO, the COO, the CFO, all rolled into one person. And so the burden and stress on a small business owner is so much greater than, you know, a big JSE listed company where you've got reserves set aside. So
no, absolutely, that is a key point, John. And a key issue that Josie is highlighting is that and that's why issues around red tape, for example, are so disproportionately burdensome for small business, because they don't have the luxury of a separate legal compliance department or a separate HR department. They are a jack of all trades. And that's why, you know, when I started in this portfolio last year, I did a sort of a tour of the country, speaking to various stakeholders and experts in the small business space. And one of the small business owners that I spoke to in Joburg said that the biggest Achilles heel of the small business community is that they are not sufficiently organized and coordinated amongst themselves to operate in a sort of ecosystem kind of way. Whereas if you look at an economy like Taiwan, where most of their economy is also made up of SMEs, they're all linked up in very structured peer-to-peer value chains, and then you have centralized sort of secretariats where they pool the need for various sort of business process aspects. So that's the kind of development that this lockdown creates an opportunity to maybe work on going forward, because we can see where the bare bone weaknesses are.
I think as well, Josie, I mean, you're lucky your business is in Cape Town. I don't know about your business in Joburg, But certainly here, the City of Cape Town's come to the party with some rates relief as well, and they've extended it to business owners. And so my advice to you and to other business owners, if you've got property rates or your municipal rates account, that there are arrangements for you to be able to pay those over, and it's on our website, the details where people can apply in the City of Cape Town to get that rates relief as well. Obviously, I don't know, you probably don't pay the rates in your building.
No, I don't.
But certainly, if you're a business owner and you've been affected as in your residential property as well, you're also able to make those applications, because that's also another big overhead for a lot of businesses, their municipal rates account. And I really think this is a time for municipalities around the country to also realize that to sustain their rates base going forward, they need these businesses to stay open, to keep generating that money going forward. Josie, so at the beginning of the crisis, I'm sure there must have been a few sleepless nights, lying awake, racking your brain. What do I do? How am I going to get through this?
Absolutely, and at first I was really fearful. I must be honest. I had a break, sort of down day where I just cried, and then I thought, you know what, I just got to get up and do this, because fear is the worst thing. Fear is absolutely the worst. We can't go into fear, because that's not going to be productive and it's not going to be helpful. So then I started making plans, and I think the minute you start working on something positively, it makes you feel better. I do think that moving forward, we're all going to have to really be very kind to each other. Yeah, really. That's
I think so too.
Suppliers, creditors, debtors, whoever, we're going to have to just be really kind to each other, because it is very, very stressful for small business owners. And everybody's in the same boat. So,
let's just talk about chains as well. The thing is that small businesses may be small, but many of these businesses like Josie and others feed into bigger industries. So there could actually be, if small businesses start to shut down, there could actually be an impact further up the value chain, which could bring big businesses down, Zach. We were talking about the wine industry earlier. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's correct. And so that's why I think it's important to reiterate the call that's been going out, that big corporates who have the cash reserves, who have the buffer, must please ensure timely payment to small business owners, small businesses, especially where services already have been rendered. We need everyone to play their part.
I think that's what Josie talks about being kind. Now it's not a time to push small suppliers out to 180 days. They need the money now. If they've got outstanding invoices, if you're a big company, you can afford to pay your graphic designer or the person who's designed the label or someone who's provided a service. Let's pay them, because they need the money a lot more, and you're going to need them further down the line as well. If these small businesses all close down, it's going to be very difficult for big businesses to be able to get the services that they need.
Quite right. Yeah.
So let's look at the wine industry, for instance. So there's been a lot of talk about, let's just stop the exports. And the exports got opened again. They then got shut down because you're not allowed to transport alcohol now, and it's basically cut down the wine export. And so some people think that they're punishing the big, wine farm owners, etc. They forget there's 40,000 people who work in that business, but there's also a lot of small businesses that feed into that. Whether it's designing of the labels, the manufacturing of the corks, the marketing that goes into it. Often these are small businesses. And
another key aspect in that regard is the transports. As I was saying before the live stream, the way that many wine farms and even other large businesses that have a transport or logistics elements, is that in an effort to empower their employees who were previously in-house, is they would sell to them one of the vehicles, allow them to start their own little transport company, and in that way become a supplier, and they are developed as a supplier as per the empowerment scorecard. So those are also the people and the livelihoods who are being adversely impacted by this wine export ban.
So Cherie Goldstein writes into us from the from our online chat. Sole proprietors need relief whether registered with CIPC or not. Please help.
Yes.
Do you want to take us through that
I am
impediment?
so glad that Cherie brought up that point. I did actually have it on my notes as a key point to emphasize, if only towards the end. This, John, is the big indictment so far on the part of governments, which is that sole proprietors and even that self-employed people, but also even informal traders have been completely marginalized in the preparations, in the plans, and in the conversation. So the finance relief, the debt relief scheme, makes no provision for sole proprietors. You need to be a registered company in order to qualify. Even in terms of essential service people who qualify to ply their trade, so tradespeople like plumbers and electricians, they can't actually get that CIPC certificate because it requires a company number, which you wouldn't have if you're a sole proprietor. So this is a big gap that has been left so far, and it does need to be addressed, and it's something that we've been raising through our media statements and through our advocacy.
So how would you address it? If we were in government, what would you do to address that gap there?
Well, so very simply, in terms of the trade and industry aspects, and my colleague Dean McPherson, as the Shadow Minister there, could also speak to it, is I would just make an ID number the information that you input as a sole proprietor if you qualify to provide an essential good or service in order to get that certificate. That's the first thing. But then in terms of the relief assistance mechanisms, we either need to expand and otherwise customize the criteria of the instruments that are currently in place, or as the minister actually promised she would a week into the lockdown, that they would I would develop and roll out a dedicated relief assistance instrument for self-employed people and for informal traders, one that is more flexible, one that is simpler, in order to at least give that access to that sector.
Yeah, because I mean, you could potentially be missing out a huge chunk of
Enormously
people
so.
who
Yeah.
who really need the assistance at the time, but for the want of a CIPC number, are not able to access it. And, often these sole proprietors employ lots of people, and you really stand the chance of putting a lot of people out of work here. I've got here a question here. We've got one on from Jeremy Doveton Helps. And I suppose it also speaks to your situation, Josie. They talk about couriers being allowed to operate. Should couriers be allowed to operate? It's a very controlled environment, but it at least allows some trade to go on. Do you use couriers, or do you have your own in-house transport?
We have our own in-house transport. We have occasionally used couriers when we've done something like that's got to be delivered in Joburg. We've done corporate gifts that have gone there. Then we've used them, but we've got our own guy. Yeah,
okay, great.
Our own vehicle, our own driver. Yeah.
But I suppose couriers is one of those things we could open up, provided the right PPE was being used, the gloves, mask, etc. There was the right protocol in place.
Yes.
Online businesses being able to order something online and have it delivered at your home.
Correct.
Should be one of the businesses that we are stimulating, because it doesn't rely on a lot of people coming together, congregating, where you've got to worry about social distancing. So certainly in our smart lockdown model, we've got online businesses as being one way you could start to open up the economy pretty soon.
Yeah.
How much of your business could you do from an online basis?
I do have an online store, but the problem is that we are not allowed to purchase flowers. Yeah. So that's the problem. And that is why I started with the vegetables. Yeah. And to send vegetables and chocolates and gifts like that, things like that as a gift, instead of doing flowers. Mm-hmm. So, but our online store does well normally, but okay. I mean, obviously it's not being able to deliver flowers is really been a problem.
Big problem, yeah.
And John, that was a big beat that the government missed in the design of the lockdown regulations, is in particular food delivery, right? Yeah. Because obviously we know that restaurants, because of the sit-down component, you want to minimize people sort of congregating. But with many restaurants or food outlets being small businesses, hiring, employing 10 to 15 people. There's no concrete reason to my mind why the kitchen operation can safely continue operating, providing that essential good, and then it's all the protocols, distancing, hygiene, etc. And then it's only operating for collection and for delivery, and in that way we can ease the pressure on people having to congregate at the few stores that remain open as supermarkets to buy food. And we keep the economy going as well.
Well, thank you very much, Zach, and for Josie, and for those viewers who want to order a fabulous fruit basket from Josie, you can check her out online, www.fabulousflowers.co.za. Help a small business out during a tough time. Josie, thank you very much for your time today, and all strength to you. And I just want to say, your positiveness in a difficult time is so infectious, and keep strong.
I'm so glad, Chris, that we have to do that.
Keep strong during this time. You're in our thoughts, and we're going to get through this. I'm convinced of it, and it's going to be through the attitude of people like that. Zach, thank you very much for being on the show today, and do you want to wrap up? Anything you want to say to any of the viewers out there?
Sure. No, thanks very much, John, and thank you to everybody who tuned in, and please do spread the word about the content here today, and share the link afterwards, because we really need, I'm still getting queries from small business owners who literally have no idea where to go, and it's important we all play our parts to share the information. I think the only point I would like to end off as closing remarks is that in the short term, we're talking distress relief, we're talking a lifeline, we're talking propping up businesses so they can make it out of lockdown. In the long term, as you will touch with Jordan and others, it's really about that fundamental reform to improve the ease of doing business and to lower the cost of doing business for small businesses, cutting red tape and allowing them to flourish and prosper.
Well, thank you for your time today, Zach. It's always great to interact with you, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on the show in the next little while to talk about the progress, particularly on how we're going to get these payments streamlined and get the cash into the hands of people. Well, South Africa, thank you for tuning in. That's all we've got time for this week. The shout out this week goes to all those frontline testing people who are out there trying to ramp up the testing in South Africa. If you're a nurse or a community health worker or somebody who's on the front line trying to get that testing figure up to 17,000 at least per day, thank you for the work that you're doing to make this work. Remember to tune in on Friday at 2 o'clock, same place, for our next episode, where hopefully we're going to be able to traverse some of the regulations and to update you on where we are at with our fight in terms of dealing with the unfair regulations or those that make no sense during this time. Remember as well that we've opened up on our website a consolidated place where you can go and check for all the resources. So if you're a small business, whether you're an employer, we've got a website called www.da.org.za/COVID-19 relief resources. It's got very easy to understand infographics there, which show you very much how to go about doing and making these applications. South Africans, we're going to get through this. As I've said, we've seen the positiveness of Josie today, and it's through the best will and the best of us as South Africans that we're going to emerge from this stronger. Let's hope this evening we'll get some clear direction from the President on what the economic package looks like, and obviously, hopefully, that we're going to be able to start jump-starting our economy again. We can't stay in hard lockdown forever. We need to make sure that we can start to transition to get the economy moving so we protect both lives and livelihoods. Thanks for tuning in this week. We hope you found it informative and interesting. Stay safe, South Africa. We'll see you on Friday.